Hello, this is C.H.E.K. Welcome back to my video blog today. My video blog today is an extension on my previous video blog where I talk about the issues of the all. Today, I'm going to refer to an article that recently came out on naturalnews.com by Mike Adams. I put the title of the article here, Battle for Humanity Nearly Lost, Global Food Supply Deliberately to End Life, Not Nourish It. It's quite a title, and it's quite an article. In this article, Mike Adams shares what his forensic lab that he has developed and uses looking into food and what's in it has uncovered that's in our food, which for many of you is not new news. A lot of you that follow people like me and are interested in holistic health and issues of the world are already quite hip to a lot of these things. It's just interesting to see that it's getting worse and worse and worse, not better and better and better, even though there seems to be a larger growing awareness of what health is, what food is, what's the dangers in our chemistry, our food supply, our environmental issues, and all the things that have been being talked about and movies have been made about. So my point is, and what's concerning to me, is that with all the media attention, the problem continues to be more of a problem, not less of a problem, which means from a perspective of being a therapist, if we look at humanity at large, it means that we're still in the contemplation stage of change. We're not really into the action stage of change. And for many, we're even in pre-contemplation. In other words, contemplation means, wow, there might be some merit to some of these issues. Pre-contemplation is like an alcoholic who keeps hearing from people that they're an alcoholic, and they keep denying it and saying, I don't drink any more than any of my friends do, without realizing all their friends are alcoholics. So pre-contemplation leads to contemplation, which means I'm considering the possibility that maybe I should change. Action means change, and action then leads to the maintenance phase where you practice the change until it becomes a natural way of living for you. So we're largely in the pre-contemplation and contemplation stage of changes, and what concerns me is that we may be playing a bit of a game of Russian roulette by pre-contemplating, doing nothing, contemplating, thinking too much, instead of paying attention to the evidence that's right in you, not in front of you, in you. So I'm going to share some of the basic findings of the article, and I'm going to post a question to you, and then I'm going to give some of my suggestions. But this is a real legitimate issue. It always has been, and it will be until we all get together and do something about it. So what is this article that I encourage all of you to read, and I'll put the link to it right next to my video so you can get to it easily and read it for yourself, and maybe we can have some intelligent dialogue amongst us about it. Well, what is the article saying? Well, the article is saying that, lo and behold, we are finding more and more things in food that should be illegal and often are, that should not be in food that are, and as I said earlier, the problem's getting worse, not better. So, azodicarbonamide, which is called the yoga mat chemical. It's what they use to fluff up yoga mats so that when you lay on a yoga mat, it's not hard, it's spongy. It's also used in the soles of running shoes to make them spongy. And what the article says, and I don't doubt it at all, Mike Adams isn't famous for bullshitting people. His business wouldn't do well if he did. What we're finding here is that we're all eating yoga mats and running shoes, and that stuff's largely being disseminated through fast food chains, which he gives several names of in here. And some of them won't reply when asked why, but the reality of it is this stuff is poison, and you're not supposed to be eating shoes and yoga mats no matter who gives them to you. Next, the article talks about heavy metal poisoning and points out that they're now finding aluminum in soils all over the place. And the question is, how does aluminum get into our soils all over the place unless it's coming through the atmosphere? And it could be coming from the nuclear meltdown in Japan. It could be coming from a wide variety of sources. And unfortunately, I wouldn't put it past the government to spray stuff like that. And there's all sorts of theories about what's being sprayed by jets in chemtrails, etc., etc. So we now have a problem with heavy metal poisoning in our soils. And remember that if you study history, when the Romans used to conquer territories, they would send soldiers out to salt the fields so they could not grow their own crops. They had to come to the Romans to get the food, and that was how they controlled an area. So these tactics in concept are ancient tactics. They're just still being used in new and interesting ways. So we also have big issues with genetically modified organisms. I'm studying a program, an audio book, which is the audio of the book, Life at the Speed of Light by Craig Venter, one of the top researchers in genetics. And it's all about the production of synthetic life, what is life. And I'll tell you what, listening to that program is quite shocking, especially when you're hip to all the ways that they tell little stories to make you think that we need this, which is like the story we keep being told with genetically modified organisms, and that story's in there too. We can't feed everybody with organic farming or farming, so we have to go to genetically modified organisms. Well, first of all, that's bullshit. The people that say that are usually so bought and paid for they're not even thinking rationally and don't even know what organic farming really is themselves, haven't looked into it. I have looked into it extensively. There's tremendous documentation. All you got to do is go to places like the British Soil Association. Any of the soil associations worldwide has tremendously good information on that. I've quoted this book earlier, Farmers of 40 Centuries by Dr. King, which is a U.S. government investigation all the way back in the early 1900s as to how Chinese were able to out-farm Americans who had farming equipment, etc. And they found that the average Chinese, Korean, or Japanese farmer could produce as much on 1 2/3 of an acre farming organically as the average American farmer could produce on 40 acres. So Dr. King showed that the very farmers that were being laughed at by American farmers were actually so much better than us. It would be like comparing Kobe Bryant to a high school basketball star. He might be good in high school, but compared to Kobe Bryant, he's, you know, just a seedling. So we've got all sorts of stories being told, and people keep buying into it without thinking about it. That's another problem. We've got farming and food processing chemicals in general. So we have, you know, major issues with farming chemicals damaging the soil, farming chemicals damaging all the creatures in and of the soil, including a reduction in bird traffic. So whenever you start damaging farm, you're not only affecting the soil, but you're affecting the water, you're affecting the atmosphere. And since we now know better than ever that these things travel all over the place, look at all the problems with genetically modified seed. You got a corporation called Monsanto trying to own seeds, trying to make it so you cannot plant crops unless you buy their seeds. We've got seeds that are growing plants that people are now eating that produce very dangerous pesticides right inside the food. So we have people eating the equivalent of plants that manufacture pesticides. This is so ridiculously stupid and dangerous, yet people actually believe it, right? Consider that. Okay? We've got medical drugs and related illnesses going through the roof. I recently read a report, I was listening to a report on the news where they studied things like for how many cases of deaths reported by a physician each year are not reported. And essentially it's a ratio that's pretty significant, but the end-all and be-all of the research that I was listening to being shared was that medical drugs are most certainly the #1 cause of death in the world. Not heart disease, not cancer, medical drugs and the negative side effects. Yet people keep buying this crap off television without even listening to the fact that the side effects are often not only significantly worse than what they're trying to address, but there's so many side effects. You could have 5 or 6 serious health problems in response to using one of those drugs to treat your inability to sleep or get an erection or your depression, which largely comes from believing this crap. Okay? Next, we have the issue of brainwashing and brain frying, which is the equivalent of education in the corporate sense of the word. So we now have television averages of 4.7 hours a day plus. That does not include how much time people spend looking at phones. Phones are now televisions. If you were to add up how many minutes a day each person on average spends looking at the handheld television and add it to the time they spend watching a television, you've now got children who are probably approaching 8 or more hours a day exposing themselves to light. Remember this about light. Light has an almost infinite capacity to carry information, as does water. They made it illegal to do subliminal programming years ago, but I'm sure if you looked into the technology on what can be done with light, that there is a tremendous number of ways that they can program you without you even knowing it that may not even be common knowledge yet. I've looked through some of the patents of some of the equipment available to control people, and they've literally got technology now where they can point ray guns at crowds and change their behavior, make them want to buy things, make them angry, disperse the crowd, cause violence. You would not believe the stuff that's out there. And if I can find it on patent searches, it means there's a lot more stuff that's worse that you cannot find. So what I'm saying here is we have weapons of mass distraction. We have got people actually believing the stuff they're seeing and reading. We've got people believing that just because some famous athlete is standing there with a monster in their hand and a monster hat that they actually use that stuff. We've actually come to the point where athletes themselves and movie stars and famous people are compromising their ethics to such a dangerous degree that kids and people actually believe that this stuff really works. And I know firsthand, I train a lot of famous people, movie stars, athletes, you name it, and I can tell you, most of them do not use the products they promote. And I have had, as you can imagine, some very interesting personal conversations with some of these people about why would they market stuff that goes completely against the values that they live themselves. And the answer is always the same: I gotta make a living. Well, here we are, we're all making a living, and we're all drinking and eating chemicals and dying together and promoting shit that we don't even use, etc., etc., etc. So, you know, as I'm saying here, you can't blame it all on the companies because we keep doing it, and a lot of us are aware, and there's enough buzz about it out there that people have enough opportunity to find the truth and act on it, but they don't. They continue to do what they've always done, which continues to get the results we've always gotten, which is what we've got. So, one of the propositions that Mike Adams is making in here is that the whole purpose of all this poison in the food supply is to dumb people down, slowly kill them, so it's very profitable as they're dying. If you just kill people with genocide, you just got to light fires and dig holes, a la Hitler. But if you kill them slowly and make it very profitable, then the paradox of it is it increases the economy. People get sick, they go to doctors, that gives people jobs. So it's actually quite a real interesting way to look at lowering the population on the planet. It's certainly a scary thing, but it's, look, what they've been using wars to do that for a long time. The question is, what would you rather have, a third world war, or would you rather have people that are too stupid to read labels and pay attention die off, and then wonder if the rest of us can clean the mess up without them? I'm, you know, laying some cards on the table here. I'm not saying one solution is the right solution. I'm just saying that we all have to be realistic. We have a very, very massive population on this planet, and it's going to be very big. You know, it won't be long before we have 10 billion people on the planet, And we're really having problems already with water, food, space problems, toxicity problems. The oceans are in trouble. We've got systems collapsing all around us. And I wanted to make the point that this article suggests this is causing a dumbing down of humanity. And I have personal experience of the fact that it is. So you see my little note here, brainwashing and brain frying is the equivalent of decreased education. My grandfather was a school teacher for the Los Angeles School District for 35 years. My grandmother was the Redondo Beach School District superintendent for probably 25 of the 35 years she was a school teacher. My grandfather told me personally that when he retired, which was probably 20 years ago now, that the education that a 12th grader was graduating with was actually the equivalent of an 8th grade education when he went to school. They've had to drop 4 years, which is the entire high school education in the United States, because they had so many people failing. My grandfather said they had 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids that had failed 3, 4 years in a row, and so they were having tremendous problems with girls getting pregnant, violence in the school. My grandfather had people pulling knives on him, and they had to have police in the school. I know this to be true. I'm only affirming that I've got it firsthand that our education system is in dangerous states, and that we actually think we're educating our people, and we're not. We're not educating our kids, and we also have teachers that are frustrated and burnt out with the system. We don't feed kids food in school. Most kids come to school with packaged poisonous crap with yoga mats in them and other poisonous stuff, and we sit around wondering which doctor is going to take my child cancer away, and they use the same damn chemicals to try to get rid of your cancer that caused them. And if you have not read Lynn McTaggart's book, What Doctors Don't Tell You, which is full of research, real research that's been suppressed or you're not likely to know about, you find out some radical things, like mammograms are largely a scam that don't do much for people. Radiation and chemotherapy, on average, if I remember correctly, are only something like 4% effective, which means you're taking a 96% risk of getting worse. There's a time and a place for everything, but at large, most of these things are very overstated and underproductive, but we keep doing it. Okay? Then we have population control, which is what this is about. The question I have for you is, if you were in charge of the world, and you had about, let's say 3 billion people too many right now, based on some estimates of what the world can handle, and that would be a conservative one, what would you do to lower population, knowing that telling people not to have babies doesn't work, giving people birth control doesn't work, wars work, but it's not ideal, so what do? Well, remember, there may be people called the Illuminati, and there may be governments that want to control the world and have their own ideas, but if you don't have a better idea and you can't get people behind you, then you're going to have to succumb to the greater idea with the greater power and the greater number of people. And as it looks to me like people seem to enjoy eating poison and going to hospitals and having their organs and glands cut out instead of living normally. The number of people that know how to live well but don't do it is significant, so it boils down in many instances to an issue of energy, vitality, nutrition, mental clarity, and taking action. So I'm simply asking you as a question, if you were put in charge of the world, what would you do to lower population? And this looks scary and nasty, but the question I have for everybody is, can you think of a better way than to poison the people off that are too unintelligent or unwilling to look at the actual research and to do the things that we need to do to make the world work together? And could you find a better way to eliminate population than to allow people to eat the things they think they love to eat, go the places they love to go, watch the phones and all the programming and believe all the movies and believe all the advertisements, and let them basically weed themselves out? I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just saying at least this way is relatively less violent than dropping bombs on people like the Americans did to the Japanese and all the other kinds of stuff that's going on. So what are we going to do? Well, one, I've been making as many contributions as I can to this problem for my entire 30-year career. How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy was one of my main contributions. The Last 4 Doctors You'll Ever Need, one of my important contributions. The CHEK Holistic Lifestyle Coaching Program, which you can enter from any profession with no prerequisite education other than reading my book and just minor stuff. There's a lot of things that I've done in my life to try to be part of the solution. And if more of us were just participate along these lines, we'd have more energy, more vitality, more willingness to work, grow, and live and love together, because we would heal the I of ourselves, have healthier relationships, which would bring us into a mastermind principle. If you got a bunch of people in a group, say you got 10 people in a group, but 9 of them are sick, dragging their butts, wiping their noses, and can't get time to exercise, eat well, and think well, then you're not going to get a very good mastermind group. But if you get healthy people together that have good values, that are conscious and aware that we are the planet, then you can get some good problem solving going, and that's what I'm encouraging. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not even saying I'm wrong. I'm saying we need to put our heads together. All I know to be true is this. And at 52, it still works well, still thinks well. I don't need Viagra to make love to my lovers, or I don't need pills to train in the gym, or whatever. So my solutions are, one, remember you're voting with your wallet. The political system's bullshit. It doesn't work. It never has worked. Maybe in the very, very beginning it might have worked for a while, but I mean, we don't need to go into a long lesson on politics. It's the same shit. It's the same lies. It's the same crap all the time. It's game after game after game. When are we going to wake up and realize it ain't working? What does work is your wallet. If you don't buy it, they can't make it. These large corporations are like dinosaurs with massive appetites, and they rely on you to feed it. So if you quit buying poison, they can't make it. If you start paying attention to farming and soils, and if you take advantage of the fact that you can grow a tremendous amount of food in a very small area. During the Second World War, research shows that 50% of all the food eaten was grown in people's backyards, and I've got research in my library showing that during the First and Second World War, disease rates of many types dropped almost to radically low levels, and what they concluded was people couldn't afford to eat junk, so they got healthy. So the question is, do we need another war to get healthy, or are we going to say, wait a minute, let's protect our soils, because if we have to grow food in our backyard, we need to make sure our backyard's not poisoned either, which means you got to pay attention to putting things like Roundup on the ground and Raid and all the chemicals that people use in their house and in their backyard without even thinking about it. If you don't buy it, they can't make it. That's how we're going to change the world, right there. The rest of it is secondary, but you have to know what you're going to buy, which means you have to be healthy enough to be aware of what health is, or you don't know what to buy and who to support. 2, support the world with healthy 4-doctor values. Whenever you're living your dream, it means you're pursuing your own happiness and you're taking responsibility for creating that for yourself. And to the degree that you're creating joy in your life, you're teaching others to create joy in their life. And to the degree that your love is important for you to experience, if you want to race motorcycles or ride horses or bicycles or swim with the dolphins, you need to have enough energy and enough vitality to go do that, which brings you right back to food, diet, and lifestyle. And if everybody was chasing after their dreams with some honesty and some passion and aware of what it means to live a dream, we would all be in a lot better place. Right now, we're so drunk, so confused, and so drugged, we don't even know whose dream we're chasing after. We just know that whatever they sell on television and whatever they put in magazines and on the radio, people believe it, buy it, and don't get slimmer, don't get more beautiful, etc., etc. Right? Stay aware. It doesn't matter what you read on a label. What you read is usually only a fraction of what should be on a label. My investigations into labels have shown me that they would need 40-page books to list all the chemicals that they're not listing on the label. And I've talked about this in my You Are What You Eat audio program and many other places. So what I'm suggesting here is, regardless of what anyone says or what it says on any label, pay close attention to what it was that led you to look for a given supplement, food, or product, and then pay aware of what's happening inside you. Am I really getting slimmer, and am I getting slimmer while getting healthier, or am I getting slimmer and more exhausted and getting bags under my eyes and my skin's wrinkling and my dick won't stand up because I've lost 20 pounds on some crazy product that's a magic superfruit from some foreign planet that fell here from, you know, outer space and all the stories they tell. Feeling is the most important component of making a decision. If you don't feel how your body is reacting to your exercise, feel how you're breathing, feel how you're thinking, feel how your capacity to make love is, feel how your capacity to connect to other people is, feel how your digestion and elimination is, feel how your breathing is, feel what your heart rate's doing, feel what your blood pressure's doing, feel how well you urinate and defecate, feel how well you respond to exercise or even the thought of it. Those are the only things that ultimately you should be using to make decisions. What people tell you is dangerous to listen to, because you actually might believe them and convince yourself that you're feeling better while you're actually not, which I see happening quite a lot. As a side note, in my entire 30-year career, I have not had one single case where an athlete or an individual that came to me often taking piles of pills and supplements and vitamins and superfoods, I have not one case ever where I said, and I always do this, take yourself off everything. The only thing I don't get them off is drugs that they have to take under medical prescription, at which time I try to work with a physician to find healthier alternatives. But at no time in my professional career has anyone who stopped all that stuff not came back to me and said, oh my God, Paul, I feel so much better. Why was I spending all that money? And some of these people are spending $600 to $1,000 a month on supplements alone. Now, a lot of these are professional athletes who can afford that, but a lot of them aren't too. So if nobody that I've ever coached, and there's been a lot of people that I've coached, has come to me and not said, hey, Paul, I felt better taking the pills, then why do people keep taking them when it's obvious that they're not working? Why? Because they keep hearing other people say things and they believe it. Grow your own food. I talked about that. Look, my wife bought a little planter about the size of a single bed, a kid's single bed, like you'd get like in a kid's summer camp or something, just one little single bed. My wife grew so much food out of that thing, tomatoes, peppers, squash. I mean, that thing was mind-boggling. I kept looking at all the food she was bringing out of there going, that's all coming out of that one little box, about the size of this blackboard. Literally, the size of this blackboard. And we were having the joy of eating our own peppers, our own cute, big, beautiful tomatoes and squashes and all sorts of stuff. And then she just had a couple of other little mini ones going around the house. Amazing. You can significantly enhance your health and performance with a 25% increase in organic food. 50% makes this obviously a bigger increase, but research by the British Soil Association showed that even a 25% increase in organic food could significantly increase the sperm count in males. 50% brought it back up to a significantly high level, but 100% is obviously the best. Okay, so follow the money when buying organic supplements. Follow the money when looking at politicians. Follow the money when you're looking at drug companies. A great resource for this is the journal The Ecologist. It's absolutely excellent for looking into large corporations and people like that. And I've looked into this quite a lot myself, and what you find, lo and behold, a lot of these people that own these large corporations are investing both in the disease and the cure. People that own stock in cigarette companies also own stock in stop smoking kits and drugs. People that own factories that make alcoholic beverages also invest in drug rehab programs and get off alcohol, drugs, or whatever. You go right down the line, and I've looked into this, and the ecologist has done investigations like this, and you see every time, with rare exceptions, that these people are investing on both sides of the fence. They create the disease and they create the solution. The question I have for you is, how is that any different than software companies that make security software for computers, who have also been found to hire hackers to make viruses so they can then create the disease and sell you the solution? There's no difference functionally than that. If you look at the science of brainwashing, all they do is create stress and confusion and then give you a solution and point you in the direction that they want you to go. Classic brainwashing. So we need to step up to the plate, ask ourselves, what would I do if I was in charge of the world and I had these problems? And what is the world? The world is all of us. And as soon as you start taking care of yourself, your own soils, and your own wallet, you're making the world a hell of a lot better place. And if we focus on getting ourselves healthy enough to have a good mastermind group, so we can get intelligent, healthy people that are aware of what really matters together to start guiding the education of children and people at large, we can solve a lot of the problems. But as David Suzuki says very quaintly, and he's not a man that's a bullshit artist, we're at 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds of human existence on this planet if we don't get together and do something intelligent immediately. I'm not an alarmist. I'm happy to die. I'm happy to die with everyone. I've lived a full, beautiful life. I'm here to say, what about the people that haven't lived yet? What about the kids that don't know any better? What about the people who are my age but have never truly lived yet? If we get together, we can all enjoy being here. If not, our kids are going to have one hell of a go. That's my perspective. Thank you, Mike Adams, for sharing. Thank you, Troy Casey, and all the CHEK practitioners that do your best to share your love, your truth, and your goodness every day. And thank you to all of you who are actually really making an effort to be part of the solution. Oh, great Spirit.